really for the poor people. And the IMF then steps in and sets the guidelines. And it sets what it calls conditionalities. And one of the conditionalities in this case, and in many, is to privatize, to turn the thing over to one of our companies. And that just perpetuates the system. And in the case of Bolivia, the Bolivians rebelled. And they elected a president who then was a real threat to the corporatocracy, and so Bechtel dropped the suit. If somebody else had been elected president of Bolivia, Bechtel, I'm sure, would have stayed in there with their lawsuit and probably would have eventually won it and gotten paid damages by Bolivia, but it didn't happen that way. And that goes on and on and on in country after country after country. If we don't like what a democratically elected leader of another country is doing, for example, opposing the exploitation of oil in his country, as Chavez is doing in Venezuela, or the exploitation of gas or water, as Morales is doing in Bolivia, then we try to corrupt people into changing that and going back to the old system. And we try to corrupt those particular officials. So in the case of South America, in recent elections, 7 countries representing over 80% of South American population elected presidents that ran on an anti-corporatocracy platform. Now, these presidents did not run on an anti-American or anti-European policy. If I, as an American, go to any one of these countries, I'll be embraced with open arms. And they love our principles. They love our Declaration of Independence, but they hate having their resources exploited by us. That's what they ran against, the corporatocracy. And once these presidents were elected, someone who looks like me, I had the job at one time, will walk into that president's office, speaks the language, speaks Spanish, whatever, Portuguese, walks into the office and says, "Congratulations, Mr. President," or in the case of Chile, Ms. President. And now I just want to remind you that I can make you and your family very, very rich if you play my game, our game. Or I can see to it that you're thrown out of office or assassinated if you decide to fulfill your campaign promises. And usually it's said a little more subtly than that because there may be a tape recorder listening. But they get the message because every one of those presidents knows what happened to Arbenz of Guatemala and Allende of Chile and Roldos of Ecuador and Lumumba of the Congo and Torrijos and on. The list is very long of presidents that we have had thrown out or assassinated. There's no question about that. And they all know this. So we perpetuate the system that way. Here you offer from this pocket, you offer a few $100 million, corruption. Or from this pocket, you offer subversives, jackals, to go in and overthrow the government or assassinate the president. And if I'm in that position, if I'm that president, and even if I'm very integritous and I really believe in what I'm going to do, what I've said, well, what am I going to do? Because I know that they can do this. So I'm very tempted to accept the corruption because if I don't, I'm going to be taken out. And if I'm taken out, what's the next guy going to do? He's going to be scared to death. And so, yes, there are a lot of very corrupt officials, but who's doing the corrupting? We're doing the corrupting in most cases. And I talked about this on a presidential level, but it happens all the way down through the ranks. It happens at every governmental level, and it happens in the corporations in those countries, and it happens throughout the whole system. So if the corporatocracy does not like what's going on in Nigeria or Botswana or Thailand or any other country, they go in and they send people like me and they send economic hitmen in and we try to corrupt the system. We offer the bribe and at the same time the threat. And if the leader doesn't buy, then in fact we do send in what we call the jackals, and they overthrow the government or they assassinate the leader. And this has happened time and time and time again. In Iran under Mossadegh, you know, we overthrew a leader, a democratically elected leader, because he wanted to get more of the oil profits from Iranian oil to go to the Iranian people. We did the same thing in Iraq under Qasem, who was a very popular president of Iraq and decided that he wanted to get more of the profits from Iraqi oil to go to the Iraqi people, not to the foreign companies. So we decided he had to go. He had to be assassinated. We sent an assassination team in the early 60s. It was headed by a young man at the time who failed and got wounded in the process and had to flee the country. That was Saddam Hussein. He was our hired assassin. He failed, so the CIA went in directly and had Qasem publicly executed on Iraqi television and put Saddam's family in power. We've done this time after time after time. Usually the economic hitmen are successful, so we don't need to send in the jackals. But on those occasions when we're not successful, as for me, I failed with Omar Torrijos in Panama and Jaime Roldos in Ecuador. And so the jackals were sent in and assassinated these men. On the very few instances when neither the economic hitmen nor the jackals are successful, then and only then do we send in the military. And this is what happened in Iraq. The economic hitmen were unable to bring Saddam Hussein around. The jackals were unable to take him out. He had very loyal guards and he had look-alike doubles, so it was difficult to take him out. And so we sent in the military. And the first time we sent in the military, we could have certainly taken Saddam out at that point, but we didn't want to. He was the type of strong man that the corporatocracy loves. He could keep the Iranians in their borders and keep the Kurds under control and keep pumping oil to us. And we figured that in '91, when we took his military out, that we had sufficiently chastised him that now he would come around. And he didn't. When the economic hitmen went back in the '90s, he still refused, and the jackals were unable to take him out then again. So this time we sent in the military, and we did take him out. And the rest is history. This whole question of immigration is a fascinating one. I speak Spanish, and I often go out and talk with Guatemalans or Colombians or Mexicans or people who are here mowing our lawns and picking our fruits and vegetables. These immigrants, many of them illegal. We're trying to build a fence now to stop them. I have never spoken to one of them who wants to be in this country. They all want to be back in their countries. And these are beautiful countries. Mexico's a beautiful country. Bolivia is a beautiful country. Guatemala. They want to be back there with their families. They can't afford to be. There are no jobs for them there. And that's to a large degree because of the system that we've created, what we call the fair trade systems, the NAFTAs and all these systems that we've created that are exploiting these countries terribly. They don't have the jobs there. So they come here so they can make money, and they send a great deal of that money back to their families back there. They're not enjoying themselves in this country. They're working very, very hard, and they're performing tasks that most of us don't want to perform. And this is terribly sad. So once again, the solution to the immigration problem, and it can be a problem, yes, it can hurt our workers here. I totally sympathize with people here that feel threatened by this. But the solution is not building a fence. It's not trying to keep the people physically out. It's to allow them to create the conditions in their country that will allow them to live there. These countries have great resources. That's why we're exploiting them. We need to create a world where they can work with their own resources in their own countries. That's where they want to be, and they've got the resources. But the opposite has happened. We've created a situation where they can't find work in those countries, where we've mechanized things, where we've done it our way, a very different way, where we're exploiting them. We need to reverse that and to recognize that a fence isn't going to solve the problem, and immigration laws aren't going to solve the problem. The problem is solved not with Band-Aids like those, but by going to the root cause. This planet is hemorrhaging badly, environmentally and socially. People are hemorrhaging badly, and we may need a few Band-Aids in the interim to kind of stop the bleeding, but ultimately we've got to go to the root cause of the wound. Where is this disease coming from? Where is this injury coming from? What's the problem? And in almost every case today, the problem is the system we've created. It is the empire. It's what the corporatocracy has created. It's what I, as an economic hitman, created and am having to live with now. We need to go to that root cause, and we need to dig it out, get rid of it, change it, and implement a better system. I've met a lot of insurgents, revolutionaries. In writing books, I've sought them out. When I was an economic hitman, I had contact with them. I have never met one that wanted to be an insurgent. They want to be farmers. They want to be merchants. They want to be with their families. They don't want to carry guns. Now, I'm sure there's some crazy people out there. There's always a few that probably would do that. But the majority of these people are desperate, desperate people. Their families are starving. They don't see any hope for the future. They see themselves being terribly exploited and their kids being exploited. They're a lot like my own ancestors in the 1700s in this country who out of desperation stood up to the largest empire in the world. These people are seeing things the same way. They don't want to be doing that. They don't want to put their lives on the line. Whether it's in the Middle East or in South America or in Africa, most of these people are just plain desperate. The way for us to protect ourselves is not to think that we can kill them all, or not to think that we can control them by military means. The way to defend ourselves is to take away the conditions that cause the desperation, the hatred, and the anger. That's our best protection. Our money is not well spent when it goes into the military to go to other countries to think that we can put down people who are only trying to defend their lands and make a better life for them and their families. The way that we can defend ourselves is to give them the opportunity to really do that, to make a better life, and to make that commitment ourselves that we're going to work with them. We're going to be partners with these people to help them make a better life, because we know that will make our lives better and our children's lives. And that's the only way we can do it. I think the solution is for all of us to understand that the only way we're going to have a sane and stable and sustainable world is through really, really helping these countries to do what they need to do themselves, giving the people in these countries the power to determine their own future, not allowing dictators to do it, not allowing our corporations to do it, to really give them the opportunity to do this, and to recognize that we truly are all one. on this planet. We're very connected. We're a very, very small community. To pull the corporations off them, to stop exploiting them, and in fact to turn it around so that corporations and all of our institutions truly embrace them. If Nike's going to have factories in Indonesia, the Indonesian people, the workers in the